I think we're live, Andreas.
All
How you doing
right.
today?
Yeah, good. How are you, Mark?
Yeah, doing great. So yeah, thanks everyone for coming out today. We're gonna wait probably another minute or two before starting, but yeah, today we've got a webinar around scaling and scalability through automation. So very excited to have Andreas here from the CartRover team, and yeah, we'll give it another minute or two, and we'll get things moving. How's the weather in California?
It's a rare day here. We actually had a little bit of rain this morning. So,
Oh my.
yep.
Better. I'm coming in from Toronto, so our rain's a little colder.
Yeah, no, we consider it cold here if we need to wear socks. So,
Yeah, that's fair.
but yeah, it's always good to have some rain. It's been so dry out here, so we'll take anything we can get.
Cool. So you know what? I think we got Gary. It's tapping in. Thanks for coming, Gary. Okay, I think let's get going here. So yeah, you got Gary from New York. There you go. Um, yeah, no. So again, thanks for everyone for coming today. This is going to be a great webinar. So I've known Andreas and CartRover team for the last personally for the last 4 or 5 years, and this seminar specifically around how you can scale through automation it's important. I think it's important for business to understand and to understand the different tools and aspects around it as you're looking to kind of grow out your business. So really happy to have Andreas here. Myself, I'm Mark, head of technology partnerships here at Katana, and I'll let Andreas do a quick introduction on his side of things.
Yeah, hi everybody. My name's Andreas, as Mark has shared. I'm the general manager at CartRover, which is an extensive company. We were actually acquired last year about this time and joined the Extensiv family, formerly 3PL Central. Extensiv is made up of CartRover, order manager, warehouse manager, and 3PL warehouse manager for products that build that Extensiv brand. And again, I'm the general manager of CartRover, the integration management platform. So,
Yeah, it's great to have you, Andreas. So we're gonna keep this as a conversation today. So in terms of, let's see if it's working. There we go. In terms of the agenda for today, so it's going to be about a 20-25 minute conversation on four important topics. One just around general trends and things that we're kind of seeing in the space. Just automation as a whole and how you can automate your back end and kind of how CartRover can help. Some factors that you should consider if you're looking to kind of outsource your fulfillment capabilities, and then some practical examples of things that Andreas and team has kind of seen out in market. And then afterwards, we're going to leave some time for some Q&A. So if you guys can look on the far right corner, you'll see a little chat box. Feel free anytime to post questions. Myself and we've got a couple other teammates here. We can help to answer those questions. If not, we can answer afterwards. And then at the end of the presentation as well, we'll have our contact details and we'll send an email with kind of all the pertinent information on our side too. But again, this is a conversation, so we'll let Andreas kind of do the heavy lifting over the next little bit. But then, yeah, feel free throughout to ask questions, and we'll look to integrate them through the presentation or answer them towards the end as we go. So with that, yeah, so let's start it out. So from a growing trends perspective, Andreas, I guess, e-commerce, especially with kind of everything that's been happening over the last, 12, 24, 36 months with COVID, and, just generally curious what you and the team have kind of seen over the last little bit.
sure. Yeah. I mean, there's of course a lot there, and some very very high levels. Of course, have seen a decline in order volume compared to the pandemic high, but still we're seeing the heavy lifters like Amazon doing quite well. And when you think of e-commerce, most people think of Amazon, right? That's first to mind. They're the big players. They're actually seeing an increase in new merchant accounts or new seller accounts. So more people are choosing to sell on Amazon as a platform. However, one thing we've noticed, which is quite revealing, is that Amazon as a single sales channel is becoming less and less common. So we are seeing brands that are choosing to sell on Amazon also selling on their own websites, other marketplaces, to retail through EDI. And so there's been a trend to kind of reduce the dependence on Amazon for many of these brands. And so I want to specifically say this does not mean that Amazon is not being utilized. It absolutely is. But just the number of cases we see where Amazon is that sole source of order flow is becoming less and less common. And I think that's probably a sign of the economic times, the uncertainty, right? Having more sales channels to kind of allow for a little bit of reduced risk. I think those are all key factors there. Another interesting trend we're seeing involves returns, and of course, returns is always a big point of discussion and top of mind when it comes to Q4 and Q1. Unfortunately, as it relates to e-commerce, we are seeing the percentage of returns increasing. They have been for many years and still continue to do so. In many industries, we're actually seeing average return rates at about 20% now, which is very, very high, very expensive, erodes margin. And so that has created kind of a new movement to handle this. The trend has been to move to shorter return windows. This year, Amazon shortened its extended return window from last year, October 1st, to this year, October 11th through December 31st, shortening it by 10 days. And in a recent survey done by TRG, 6 out of 10 companies shared that they were changing their return policies this year. It's also becoming more and more common to see return fees being added to online return orders to try to encourage consumers to return in store. And we're seeing an uptick in the interest and utilization of return management providers, whether that's small scale or large scale, with some using return analytics as well. But just this real heightened focus on returns and return handling, rework, etc. The last trend I wanted to share with you, that's probably one that you may be less familiar with, and one that's very early on, but very interesting, is this trend to see slower shipping as a feature. And so what that specifically is brands have started to realize that, excuse me, sorry. Brands have started to realize that while 2-day shipping is the normal and the standard that we see, Amazon has kind of standardized that. Most people don't necessarily need that. If you order a table runner on Tuesday before Thanksgiving, yes, you probably want 2-day shipping. However, if you order a table runner any other Tuesday of the year, you're probably okay with a little bit longer shipping time period. Because of this, brands have moved towards a kind of modified approach to handling shipping, offering the 2-day for the customers that really need it, but encouraging and sometimes incentivizing 4-day shipping. What that does is it allows the work week in the warehouse to be standardized. Instead of having a crush of orders on Monday and almost no orders on Friday, some of those Monday orders can now be processed on Tuesday on Wednesday, allowing warehouse workers to have a much more normalized workflow and work life. And also, by being able to utilize ground shipping more than air, it's actually much better for the environment. As an example of this, if you go to Patagonia.com, they list in their shipping options that they recommend the free ground shipping if applicable, or standard shipping options whenever possible for the least environmental impact. And so we're seeing, again, this trend moving towards a slower shipping option and trying to make that the preferred method in most cases. So.
Yeah, it's really interesting. This is going back a little bit on even your first point there around Amazon and kind of seeing trends towards other sources. So, are there other channels, like, I guess it depends on industry too, but especially around like EDI, like, are there certain areas that you're kind of seeing a lot of merchants starting to go towards right now?
In terms of other integrations along with Amazon?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would say that, I mean, of course, very common is Shopify. Everybody's has their own website on Shopify, but more than that, we are seeing a trend that smaller brands or earlier in their life cycle, they are starting to do some, retail replenishment through EDI. So that is one avenue. I would not say that that's like the majority, but we are seeing that now it's getting more and more common to see earlier life cycle brands moving into EDI. More so than anything else, we're also seeing kind of the use of additional marketplaces, things like OnBuy, Fair.com, Walmart.com, eBay. That's becoming really, really relevant. I think because it's very similar workflows. So the brands, the warehouses are already used to it. And again, it helps to kind of diversify that risk of single channel.
Cool. Very cool. So, this one, it seems at some level it seems obvious, but automating, right? You hear it a lot. Everyone kind of works towards it, but from your perspective, and I'm just curious to understand, like, how do you see it? How do you see the importance of it? Any tips? Like, what's automation, kind of the role of kind of the everyday of integration manager at Extensiv?
Sure. So, I mean, when it comes to automation, there's different levels of automation. There's things that are really, really ideal for automation, and things that aren't. And again, depending on the size and scale of the company, depends really on to what level automation becomes necessary or desirable. In general, things that require advanced decision making or are rare or not very repetitive are probably not things you need to look at automating. But things that are repetitive and do not require advanced decision making are ideal. Integration manager, CartRover. What we do is we automate orders, inventory, and tracking. And that's one area where it's very simple and straightforward. We need to get orders into a destination to be processed. We need to get the tracking information back to the source that the order was generated from. And we need to update the inventory. That's just one example. There's a lot of examples where automation makes a lot of sense. For example, getting accounting information out of your ERP for invoicing, responding to general customer inquiries, sales and leads handling. But really the important thing to think about when it comes to automating your backend operations is you're trying to reduce human errors, remove bottlenecks of having a human having to process a redundant, repetitive, and time-consuming task. You're trying to free up your team to work on like much higher value items. And the thought around this is that most of these automations involve multiple systems, that the information is generally siloed before automation. So it's getting these systems to work together. The last thing I'll leave you with here is without automation, scaling becomes very difficult. So as you scale, you'll need more automation. If you're handling 20 orders and you have 10 products, you probably need zero automation. If you've got 1,000 orders a day and 600 SKUs, you need automation.
That makes sense. Is there any, I don't know, is there anything off the top too, in terms of, so you mentioned, I guess the volume as part of it. Do you see any other use cases where someone comes in because there's like this pain point where it's like, okay, I've hit this, and now it's like, okay, I got to figure something out. Any other use cases that you've seen on your side?
Yeah, so kind of I think what you're referring to is that bottleneck, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And generally, that's the most common reason why people reach out, or companies reach out. Unfortunately, it tends to be a reactive thing. They realize, oh man, I cannot continue to scale because we have this bottleneck here, whether that it lives in the invoicing and orders and whatever aspect it does. Yes, that is very common. For CartRover, where we see it most often is as it relates to inventory, where they're selling on multiple sales channels and they're not able to manage that inventory between sales channels, and they have issues with out of stocks, oversell, things like that, and that really crushes the customer experience and kind of brings them backwards. So then all of a sudden they start becoming very conservative with the levels of inventory they'll list. Well, really what we do is we come in, we automate the inventory, we reduce inventory on all sales channels equally when orders occur. So you prevent those oversales. You can sell down to your last few items and be reassured that you're not going to have an out of stock scenario. So.
That makes sense. So volume and making sure you got the right amount of stock to sell what you need to sell across channels. Yeah, that seems important. So, yeah, I guess kind of going into a bit of a different direction here. So, some businesses look to do their fulfillment in-house. Some are looking to potentially outsource their fulfillment. So, yeah, just across the lands here, it's just how should companies look at it specifically when looking to outsource fulfillment, like considerations and other areas where you think it would be important to take a step before selecting or maybe looking to change off it.
Yeah. No, this is a great question. And this, by the way, this question alone is one I could spend all day on. I've spoken with quite literally thousands of brands about this. Um, so, as you mentioned, some brands do it in-house, some want to outsource it. There's quite a few that do both. They'll have a East Coast warehouse and have a third-party logistics provider on the West Coast. Um, there are a lot of factors to consider. I'm going to touch on what I think are some really important ones here. One thing I want to call out is one I'm not touching on is actually pricing. And that's not to say that pricing isn't a very important factor when you're choosing to outsource your fulfillment. But the reason I'm choosing to avoid it is because it tends to be one of the last factors you consider. There's so many things that need to line up properly first, that until you have all those items lined up, until all those factors are considered, pricing is almost meaningless. The three factors I was going to cover here are the required services, regions, and scale. And starting with required services, this is probably the most important thing that you yourself have to have a very good understanding of before you can start looking to outsource your fulfillment. What exactly do you need? Things like, do you have refrigerated or frozen products? Do your products have serial numbers that need to be tracked? Are you looking for standard e-commerce pick and pack, or this is B2B operations, or both? Does your product require hazmat handling? Batteries, things like that. Do you need returns to be reworked and handled? Labeling, kitting. There's an endless amount of these needs that businesses can have, and there's 3PLs that specialize in some and all of these different requirements. So knowing what requirements are core to your business are key when you start that search to outsourcing your fulfillment. From there, you get a list of a couple dozen 3PLs that fit your need. Then you look at the regions. And for the sake of this conversation, we'll keep it to the US, but this could apply globally as well. When you're picking a 3PL and a region, there's three considerations that come into mind. You can look at a region that's best for receiving. An example here would be if all your product is coming out of China, and you're picking a location based on receiving, you pick a West Coast warehouse instead of an East Coast warehouse, because it can be 40 to 50% cheaper to ship via ocean freight to LA versus the East Coast. Now, if you're looking at, let's say you have a manufacturer that has a very high minimum to get the pricing you need, you have to buy 100,000 units at a time. You know that it's 2 years to sell through those 100,000 units. You're probably going to look for the number two criteria for regions, and that's best for storage. So storage, specifically when it comes to long-term storage, you're going to find much better value if you're looking in the Midwest, right? And so if you're a company that tends to be very inventory heavy or buy for long periods of forward-looking periods, storage may be your consideration, and you may choose something in the Midwest. The third criteria when it comes to regions is what's best for shipping, and this is shipping to your customer. So this is probably the most obvious one, and the one that most companies look at without giving much consideration to the former two. But what this is just what it sounds like. The location of the warehouse as it relates to the ship to addresses. And of course, we're not just shipping to one state or one region, but in general, you'll see a trend over time that, maybe 50% of your orders go to the West Coast, 15% to the Midwest, middle of the country, and the remainder go to the East Coast. In that case, um, you know, I would suggest taking the West Coast warehouse approach. 50% of your customers can have ground affordable 2-day shipping. The rest you're doing via air for 2-day or ground for further. But most companies at that point would probably go Midwest because they feel like it's right in the middle. Although I would argue that's probably the incorrect choice, because then you are actually giving 2-day shipping to the least potential size group of orders. So last thing to consider that I have here for you today when it comes to factors to outsourcing your fulfillment is the scale of the 3PL you're dealing with. So while there are companies that are probably very happy at their current scale and are not planning on growing, that's not generally the common scenario. Most of us want to have more sales, do more business, make more money, right? So looking at how a 3PL can handle scale is really important. And that's not only over time, but day to day. So how do they handle, for example, Black Friday? Let's say you go from 500 orders a day to 2,000 orders a day. Are they going to handle that? Then you look at the overtime. Okay, what happens if my business triples in 1 year? Now, all this being said, it's totally okay to pick a outsourced fulfillment provider, a 3PL, that can't handle you if you're 3 times the size. But it's important that you know that when you choose them, so that as you grow, you can proactively find additional providers or additional solutions. And so having that as a metric that you're monitoring and constantly thinking about, and you have a trigger at when I hit this order volume, I need to find additional outsourced solutions is really, really important. One of the big challenges we've seen, and actually an additional trend in e-commerce right now, is third-party logistics companies have very little capacity. Everybody's close to max. So that means that it's going to be hard to find a warehouse that could handle most companies if they tripled, right? So it's very important now to be very agile and to be able to add additional fulfillment providers as necessary. This also kind of falls into looking at them whether or not a 3PL has a single location, multiple locations, and if they're part of the for example, Extensiv has something called Network Manager, which is a solution that allows multiple 3PLs that are owned by different individuals, different operators, to be connected with a single set of routing. And so you can, for example, send all your orders through CartRover. Excuse me, I keep saying Integration Manager. We're in the process of a rebrand, so in January we'll be Integration Manager. Today we're CartRover. So all your orders flow through CartRover into intelligent routing that can then move these orders between multiple third-party logistics warehouses, again allowing you to spin up additional warehouses as needed. Last thing I'll share here as well is that just because I got to do a little plug in here, Elliot, if you don't mind sharing the link, Extensiv has a fulfillment marketplace where you can actually go and you can enter your criteria for what you're looking for. And what that'll do basically is it'll allow you to search some pre-vetted high quality 3PLs and just open up a conversation with them if you're interested in their services. And yeah, Elliot, if you don't mind sharing that in the chat, the link to that would be great.
Yeah, I see it here. Yeah, no, you answered. I was kind of going to go into that direction around like how do you like quickly or efficiently, like after the selection, look at that expansion piece. So it's like there's a consideration piece like upfront that you have to kind of get into as well. That regional piece was really interesting between like where you're producing and where your customers are and kind of your growth plans through the process. Like yeah, that makes sense.
I would highly encourage anybody looking to outsource fulfillment to, when you pick a provider, to have a backup and maybe several backups in your mind, because sooner or later you're going to need either additional or to move. It tends to be a pretty active area, and so it's really important not to be caught, without a solution in place. So it's something that you need to actively manage when you have a outsourced third-party provider. So
cool. Okay, and then the fun, so use cases. So kind of tying it all together between industry and trends and kind of the fulfillment side, but yeah, and automation. But yeah, definitely curious just to understand if there's one or two use cases that you've seen that can kind of like help to articulate all of this into some real life examples.
Yeah, no, several different use cases and some kind of general ideas as well. But one of the things that CartRover has really strived hard for over the years is to kind of commoditize the approach to integrations. We want to make it really, really simple and straightforward, make it possible to add an integration as you need it, remove it when you don't. We intentionally keep it very simple like that. What that has done is it has allowed earlier life cycle companies to come in and try selling on different marketplaces, different websites, to, for example, have temporary promotions that they run on a flash sale site or a Facebook store, or even liquidation events through eBay or things like that. So we're trying to make it very, very easy for companies to find additional sources of revenue in additional areas where they can make sales, right? We've also standardized both the approach and pricing, and also reduced the pricing of traditional EDI integrations. And that, as we kind of touched on earlier in the conversation, is allowing brands to earlier in their life cycle start selling into retail, right? In the big box retail, which isn't on everybody's necessarily list of what they want to do, but it is an important factor of many companies when it comes to business. Being able to get into the Targets, sporting goods, whatever that happens to be, uh, you know, Home Depots, etc. As to some specifics, one interesting case we've had that has actually been repeated a few times, but this is an example of it. Is Our integrations are built to be very robust, and because we have a high level of utilization, we have a lot of uh, technical leverage with a lot of these platforms. So with a update to Shopify's API about a year ago, we had one of our 3PL customers that had a native Shopify integration lose that integration overnight. Had several hundred clients whose orders were not flowing into their 3PL. They had used us for some outlier integrations and were familiar with us, called us. And then one day we were able to migrate all their clients onto Shopify integrations. So there's no interruption to order flow, and everything made it out on time. That's the kind of stuff that makes us really happy and really proud that we can do. We can facilitate those kind of quick reactions to things like this when integrations break for people. The other thing that, as a kind of a fun use case, is Network Manager. So Network Manager is not just a fulfillment center, but it's actually a distribution network that brands can use. So it starts with CartRover, and we're getting orders into CartRover from whatever that source is. After that, those orders have been processed, and then again, intelligent routing that routes these orders into a network of warehouses. And again, these warehouses do not need to have worked together. They don't necessarily even need to know much about each other, just that we're routing orders. You have a relationship with each one of these warehouses, and it makes it easy is not the correct word, but it simplifies the process of adding and even removing additional fulfillment nodes or fulfillment providers to your network. So, and that's a product we launched last year, and I'm super excited about. So I think it's going to really be impactful for mid-sized brands looking to really maximize the efficiency of an outsourced fulfillment strategy.
Cool. Oh man, that's a lot. So, oh, you got some sort of offer here too, Andreas. Tell us more.
Yeah. So CartRover, but by definition, CartRover is pretty simple and straightforward. It's designed to be self-service, but we do offer free onboarding with every new account. The standard account's $39 a month, and it includes one order source and one order destination integration. $15 more a month at a second integration. Your first month is also free, no matter what. So what we're doing here is, if you sign up before the end of the year for a CartRover account, you will get first month free onboarding, and you'll get a $50 account credit. So you'll essentially get almost the first quarter of use absolutely free just for trying us out.
Yeah, and I think all you have to do is, in your trial, just let the team know that you attended this webinar, and then it'll apply if as it makes sense. So
correct. Yeah, what'll happen is when you sign up, you'll get a email asking you to sign up for an onboarding. When you sign up for that onboarding, just let the account specialist that you're working with know that you attended this webinar, and you'll get that $50 account credit applied to your account.
cool. So there's a couple questions for people that could not attend today. So I'll start with those. Again, if others do have some questions, feel free to write them in, or again, if you're shy, afterwards you'll get our contact details. So happy to give that, and you can send either of us information or questions afterwards. But I think one question that's popped up is just like how you guys look at yourselves in the market and comparatively to everyone else. So just curious how you look at, I guess, or how you see yourself versus competition as a whole.
Yeah. So I think one of the primary differences and one of our key drivers is that we really are looking for standardization. And so we are looking to always take the approach of a simple and straightforward solution. As much as automation is important, anytime you're signing up or setting up a new service, there's a certain level of onboarding, a certain level of investigation, learning the product, learning the process. So we're reducing that to literally to the MVP. We're trying to make that as simple as possible. And in so doing, most of our accounts are set up in one day and orders are flowing through the next day. We don't have any annual contracts. You use it as you need it. And if you don't need an integration anymore, you shut it down. That's kind of what makes us different. We're not trying to upsell you on reporting or analytics. We're not trying to add additional features. We're simply an integration platform. That's all we do. That's all we want to do. We want to get your orders from your source to your destination. And as we compare ourselves to the competition out there, the other big differentiator is our pricing. We are, generally speaking, about a magnitude cheaper than most of our competitors. We come in, again, starting at $39 a month, which is the bulk of our accounts to offer integrations. And again, we don't have the bells and whistles that the competition does, but we also feel that most of those bells and whistles are probably not needed for most of our brands. They simply want their orders, inventory, and tracking to flow. So
cool. Makes sense. And then any new integrations upcoming that you can share?
Yes. So always new integrations. Building integrations is our pastime. It's what we're doing. So we have a couple new ones coming. The first one to talk about is True Commerce. That's one we're working on right now. That's going to enable us to basically offer even more EDI options and EDI solutions. And that one's in the works right now. The other one, which is kind of fun, and by the way, we generally look at about 2 new integrations every 4 to 6 weeks. That's not a rule, but more of a guideline. But the other one that we are looking at right now and starting some work on is called Goldbelly, which is a really cool, if you guys haven't checked it out, I highly recommend checking them out. It's a kind of a food purchase site where some really interesting products are available. Momofuku has some of their noodles available there, for example, and home delivery. Pretty cool stuff.
Oh, I'm actually going to check that out. We got a bunch of those merchants in our database themselves, so that's actually
nice.
That's actually really good. Cool. Okay, I'm just going to look if there's any other questions. I think right now we're in a pretty good spot. So, yeah, I think this was great. So Andreas, I really appreciate you coming out today, and really good knowledge for everyone that was able to attend, and those that could not. And I want to also thank everybody else who did come out. Thank you. Again, you'll receive some messaging from us with regards to being able to ask questions to either myself or Andreas. And yeah, really, again, appreciate it from our side too. So to that, enjoy the rest of your week, everyone, and look forward to a really powerful 2023 ahead for all of us.
Thank you, everyone.
Take care.